When Sansa was still a little girl, Lord Eddard Stark noticed something unusual about her. Unlike Arya, who was bold and wild, Sansa was soft, gentle, and quiet. She loved listening more than speaking. She noticed little details, how someone shifted their eyes when lying, how a smile could hide anger, how a lord's hand would tighten on his cup when a dangerous topic was spoken. Ned Stark loved all his children, but he also knew the world was cruel. In Winterfell's great hall, banners of wolves and fire still danced in the torchlight, but Ned had lived long enough to know such peace never lasted. Robert Baratheon was king, but the Lannisters were growing bold. And so, he thought, a wolf must not only fight with teeth, but with silence and secrets. Arya could swing a sword, Robb could lead men, Jon could brood like a soldier, but Sansa, she could listen. So Ned began her training in shadows, quietly, without telling even Catelyn. It started small. At feasts, Ned would whisper to her, "Watch Lord Manderly's hands. See how he grabs the bread before speaking? He hides something." Or, "Listen to Ser Roderick's laugh. It grows louder when he avoids the truth." Sansa, eager to please her father, paid attention. She started writing small notes in her embroidery books, hidden among flowers and patterns. 1 stitch for a lie, 2 for a secret, 3 for a danger. She became quick at catching whispers. Servants spoke freely around her, never thinking the pretty girl with the red hair could use their gossip as weapons. Ned sharpened her skills. He gave her tasks. Go speak to Lady Hornwood and find out what troubles her lands. Ask Septa Mordain what she thinks of the Meister's books. Tell me which of the bannermen argue most after ale. Sansa always returned with answers. She learned to smile sweetly, to hide her sharpness beneath soft eyes. Arya mocked her, thinking she was only a silly girl, but Ned knew better. Then came the day King Robert rode into Winterfell. The banners of the stag and the lion filled the yard, and Sansa stood beside her sister, her eyes wide with wonder. Arya saw knights and thought of swords. Sansa saw queens and lords and thought of masks. She studied Queen Cersei's face, the way her eyes slid to Jaime whenever Robert spoke too loudly. She noticed Joffrey's arrogance, his sneer even when, bowing, Ned bent down that night and told her, "The South is full of lies, little bird, but you will see them, you will know them, and when the time comes, your knowledge will save us." Sansa nodded, her heart swelling. She was not just a daughter, meant for marriage. She was her father's spy. When they left for King's Landing, Arya carried her sword needle, but Sansa carried something sharper, her eyes, her ears, and her hidden codes. In the Red Keep, danger waited in every corner. The court was a nest of snakes, but Sansa remembered her father's lessons. She listened when Petyr Baelish whispered too sweetly. She noticed how Varys never blinked when hearing secrets. She even watched the way Cersei dismissed servants with a flick of her hand, like swatting flies. Ned began asking her quietly at night, "What did you see at supper?" And she told him who argued, who smiled falsely, who feared what name. Slowly, her reports painted a map of the court. She warned her father that Cersei and Jaime shared more than blood. She told him Joffrey's pride could be his weakness. She even whispered that Lord Baelish smiled too much when speaking of loyalty. Ned listened carefully. In the real timeline, he had been blind to the game, too honest for the lies of the capital. But with Sansa beside him, his eyes opened wider. She was becoming the wolf in silk, sharp as her father's steel, hidden beneath beauty and innocence. The court thought her harmless. That was their first mistake. King's Landing smelled of heat, sweat, and secrets. Unlike the cold honor of Winterfell, here words cut deeper than swords. Sansa remembered her father's warning, "The South is full of lies." Every step in the Red Keep proved him right. At first, the court treated her like a pretty child. Lords pinched her cheeks, ladies complimented her embroidery, and Joffrey smirked as if she was already his. That was exactly what Sansa wanted. They underestimated her, but at night, when the torches burned low, she met with her father in his chambers. Ned would ask, "What did you see?" And Sansa would unfold her observations, detail by detail. One evening she whispered, "Lord Baelish speaks kindly to you, father, but I watched his eyes. They never match his smile. When you turned your head, he looked at you as if you were a piece in a game." Ned frowned. He had known Peter since boyhood, but Sansa's words gnawed at him. Another night, she said, "Queen Cersei always holds her cup with two hands, except when Jaime is near. Then she holds it with one so she can touch him quickly." Ned's stomach twisted. The rumors of the twins' closeness returned to his mind. Sansa even noted Joffrey's cruelty, how he pinched a servant girl's arm until she winced, how he laughed when dogs fought. "He hides it in front of you, father, but I see it when he thinks no one is watching," she told him. By listening to her daughter's small, sharp truths, Ned began to weave the larger picture of the capital. He no longer stood blind in the lion's den. The moment of change came at the tournament, held in honor of Ned's new position as Hand of the King. The stands roared with cheers as knights clashed, banners fluttered, and gold coins changed hands. While Arya grew restless, and Robb, had he been there, would have looked at the jousts with pride, Sansa watched the crowd. She saw Lord Renly whispering quickly with Sir Loras, their heads close, as if lovers' secrets were more urgent than battle. She noticed how Varys leaned too far toward the shadows, always listening, never blinking. She studied Littlefinger's smirk whenever blood spilled on the sand. Later that night she told Ned, "The spider hears everything, but he fears Renly's rise, and Littlefinger enjoys blood more than most." Ned, usually slow to trust such, Games began writing quiet letters, coded, careful, shaped by Sansa's whispers. He reached out not only to old allies, but to cautious men who might resist Lannister power. What Sansa saw most clearly, however, was how the Queen's eyes clung to her children. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, the golden-haired lions. The truth struck her like a secret arrow. None of them looked like King Robert. Not one had his dark hair. That night she told Ned, "Father, the Queen's children are not the King's." Ned's hand froze on the table. He had noticed this too, but pushed it aside, unwilling to leap to such dishonor without proof. Hearing it from Sansa, who had been trained to watch, forced him to face the truth. He asked her, "How can you be so sure?" "Because," she whispered, "whenever Robert enters the hall, Cersei grows stiff, but when Jaime is near, she softens. The children glow only around him. I know it, Father. They are his, not Robert's." The wolf in Ned Stark roared at that revelation, but the spy he had trained in his daughter sharpened his caution. In the true history, Ned confronted Cersei too soon, too openly. But now, guided by Sansa's whispers, he slowed his steps. Cersei herself soon felt the danger. One afternoon, as Sansa walked in the gardens, Queen Cersei approached her. The Queen's beauty was sharp as a blade, her green eyes cold but curious. "You are a lovely child," Cersei said, brushing a lock of Sansa's hair. "One day you will be a queen." Sansa lowered her eyes, remembering her father's teaching. "Hide behind courtesy. Sweetness is your mask. If it pleases your grace," she said softly, but inside her mind raced. She studied every twitch of Cersei's mouth, every pause in her words. The Queen was suspicious. Sansa could feel it. That night, she told Ned, "Cersei knows I am not as blind as I look. She is testing me." Ned's face hardened. "Then we must be more careful. A spy discovered is a spy destroyed." And so Sansa grew sharper. She invented new ways to pass information. Her embroidery became her weapon. Flowers were not just flowers. Every stitch carried a code. She sewed black threads into roses when danger grew, gold threads when allies approached, red threads when betrayal stirred. When Ned sat in council, he carried her embroidery with him, pretending it was a father's pride in his daughter's work. In truth, it was a silent map of whispers. Even Arya, wild as she was, began to sense something. "Why does father always ask you about lords and ladies?" she asked one night. Sansa only smiled and said, "Because I listen when you don't." The web grew tighter. Sansa overheard Baelish speaking to two merchants in the hall. "The wolf is too honorable. He will die playing a game he does not understand," she told Ned at once. His jaw clenched, and he whispered, "Then we will play it differently." For the first time, Lord Stark of Winterfell began to plan not only with honor, but with strategy, and all because his daughter carried daggers made of words. The court thought Sansa a bird in a cage, singing songs of love and knights, but behind her smiles she had claws, and with every whisper she brought to her father, the Lannisters' hold on power grew weaker. They had underestimated her. That was their second mistake. The Red Keep was a trap, but now it was a trap where wolves were learning to hunt. For every secret whispered in the court, Sansa carried it like a dagger back to her father. And slowly, the daggers became a shield protecting him. The first true test came when Robert left for the hunt. In the real story, Robert's death was no accident. It was pushed along by wine and whispers. But Sansa had noticed something earlier. That week, she had seen a cupbearer trembling too much while serving the king. She had seen how the wine poured for Robert was thicker, stronger, spiced in ways that were unusual. That night, she told Ned, "Someone is sweetening the king's wine, father. They wish him slower, weaker." Ned's face turned to stone. He quietly warned the king, couching his words as concern, "Your Grace, the wine here is heavy. Be careful." Before the hunt, Robert, half drunk and laughing, cursed at him, but drank less that night. When the hunt came, he was still reckless, but not so drugged. The boar still wounded him, but the king returned alive, bleeding but breathing. Cersei's plan to be rid of her husband was delayed, and Sansa had been the reason. But the reprieve did not end the danger. Cersei grew restless, sensing that something was slipping beyond her grasp. One evening, she cornered Ned in the gardens. "You have changed, Lord Stark," she said. "You see too much now?" Ned's reply was calm. "I see only what is before my eyes, Your Grace." Yet he knew she was circling him like a lioness, ready to strike. Sansa, too, felt the tension. The Queen's eyes followed her now. Cersei would ask her gentle questions about her embroidery, her dreams of marriage, her favorite foods. All harmless on the surface, but Sansa could feel the sharpness underneath, so Sansa played her greatest role, the naive little bird. She gushed about Joffrey, spoke of fairy tale weddings, and blushed when knights bowed. Every word was a mask, every smile a veil. Cersei relaxed, believing she was still blind. That was Cersei's third mistake. Meanwhile, Sansa's spy work was reaching deeper corners. Through gossiping servants, she learned that the gold cloaks were more loyal to Littlefinger than the crown. She told Ned, and he quietly shifted his letters, calling upon Northmen already in the city to shadow him more closely. Through a kitchen maid, she learned that Varys had meetings at night with men, dressed as beggars. She passed it to Ned, who began to suspect the spider's own hidden game. Through a guard, she heard how Jaime slipped quietly into the Queen's chambers when the castle grew silent. "This," she told her father with certainty, "he is the true father of those children." Ned no longer doubted. He had the truth now, and it burned in his chest like fire. But instead of rushing to reveal it, as he once would have, he began to plan carefully, guided by his daughter's warnings. The turning point came with Joffrey. In the real story, Joffrey's cruelty went unchecked, hidden behind the Queen's power. But now Sansa was watching him like a hawk, One day, she saw him shove a stable boy for fun, kicking him until the boy bled. She rushed to her father and told him. That night, Ned invited Sir Barristan Selmy, the old knight of the King's Guard, to his chambers. "I have heard troubling things of the prince," he said, not naming his source. "If the king knew his heir behaved this way, would he approve?" Selmy's face darkened. The king would be furious. Within days, Robert himself heard of Joffrey's cruelty. Already tired of the boy's arrogance, he struck him across the face at the supper table, roaring, "No son of mine behaves like a butcher." Cersei's fury burned, but Robert's hand was still heavy, and Joffrey, humiliated before the court, glared not only at his father but at Sansa, suspecting she had whispered against him. For the first time, the prince's smile toward her was not charming, but venomous. This changed the game. Ned realized the danger was no longer only against him. His daughter was now marked. He began keeping her closer, using their nightly talks to not only gather information, but to teach her how to survive suspicion. "Trust no one with the full truth," he told her, "not even me. Keep a secret piece for yourself always. It may save your life one day." Sansa nodded, though fear tightened her chest. She was playing with lions now, and lions killed wolves when cornered. Then came Littlefinger's move. Petyr Baelish, clever as always, tried to win Sansa's trust. He found her in the Godswood, speaking softly. "You are very like your mother," he told her, "beautiful, gentle, and far too good for this cruel city. I would be your friend, little bird. I would protect you." Sansa lowered her eyes, acting shy, but she watched him closely. His voice was smooth, but his gaze clung to her like a spider's web. She remembered her father's words. "His smile never reaches his eyes." That night, she told Ned, "Baelish wants me to trust him. But he looks at me the way wolves look at sheep." Ned's stomach knotted. He had once believed Petyr an ally, but through Sansa's eyes he saw the truth. The man was dangerous, clever, and never to be trusted. Piece by piece, the fates were shifting. Robert was alive, though weakened. Joffrey was exposed as cruel. Cersei was still weaving her plots, but her children's secret was no longer safe. And Littlefinger's mask had begun to crack. Sansa Stark, the girl who once only dreamed of songs and knights, was now the silent dagger in her father's hand. The court thought her harmless. That was their fourth mistake. The Red Keep was no longer just a palace to Sansa. It had become a battlefield, though not one of swords and shields. It was a place of whispers, alliances, daggers hidden in smiles. And every day she walked its halls, she felt the noose tightening around her neck. Robert's survival had given Ned more time, but it also sharpened Cersei's desperation. The Queen's green eyes now followed Sansa more than ever, as though she suspected that behind the girl's soft smiles and perfect courtesies, something sharper hid. Sansa understood. She was dancing on a knife's edge. One mistake, one slip, and the Queen would see her for what she truly was, a wolf in silk. One night, Sansa overheard a conversation that froze her blood. She had wandered past the council chamber, embroidery, basket in hand, when she heard the voices of Cersei and Jaime inside. She paused in the shadows. "Father grows restless," Jaime said. "If Robert lives much longer, the truth may spread." "Then we must move faster," Cersei hissed. "And the Stark girl, she knows too much. Her eyes linger where they should not, perhaps an accident in the garden." Sansa's heart thudded like a drum. She pressed her back against the stone, trembling, but forced herself to stay silent until they left. Only when the corridor was empty did she hurry back to her father. That night, her voice shook as she told him, "They want me dead, father." "The Queen said so herself." Ned's hand clenched around hers. "Then we act before they strike. We can wait no longer." In the true tale, Ned had once thought to reveal the truth of Cersei's children openly, hoping Robert would act. But Now he knew, with Sansa's warnings, that Robert was too weak, too lost to wine and hunts. The Queen had already spoken of removing him. Time was short, so Ned made a different choice. Instead of telling Robert, he quietly summoned Stannis Baratheon. Stannis, stern and cold, was the king's rightful heir if Joffrey was falseborn. In the dark of night, Ned met him, Sansa present in the shadows, listening as always. "Your claim is strong," Ned told him. "The Queen's children are Lannisters, not Baratheons. My daughter's eyes have seen what mine once refused." Stannis's jaw tightened. "Then the throne is mine by right. But Cersei will strike first, and she has the gold and the guards." "Not all the guards," Ned said grimly. "The North still remembers loyalty." Sansa watched the two men. Her father, honorable but sharpened by secrets, and Stannis, rigid as stone. She knew then that war was coming, but the danger to her grew sharper still. The next day, Joffrey cornered her in the gardens. His lips curled in that cruel smile she had come to fear. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he sneered. "Always watching, always whispering with your father. My mother says wolves bite, but lions tear them apart." Sansa swallowed her fear, remembering her father's lessons. A spy survives by wearing masks. So she smiled sweetly, lowered her eyes, and said, "I only dream of being your queen, my prince. I would never bite." Joffrey studied her for a moment, then laughed cruelly. "Good, then perhaps I'll keep you." He left her trembling but alive. That night, she confessed to Ned, "He knows I watch him. He knows, father. I cannot hide him forever." Ned pulled her close. "Then if he strikes, we will already have struck first." The moment came faster than either expected. Cersei, realizing Robert was not dying fast enough, finally moved. She summoned the king's hunting companions, pressed more wine upon him, and urged him into the forest again. This time the boar gored him beyond saving. The city fell into chaos. Robert's body barely cold, Cersei declared Joffrey king. She summoned the council, filled the throne room with gold cloaks, and demanded that Ned bend the knee. But this time was different. Ned was not alone. Sansa's embroidery had already warned him which guards leaned toward Baelish, which toward the Queen, and which still had loyalty to the realm. Secret messages had already gone to Stannis, to loyal Northmen, and even to Renly, who dreamed of seizing power himself. When Cersei stood tall and declared her son the true heir, Ned rose with equal fire. "You sit a bastard on that throne," he thundered. "The blood of Jaime Lannister flows in his veins, not Robert Baratheon's. The realm will not be ruled by incest and lies." Gasps filled the hall. Swords were half drawn. Cersei's face hardened like stone. "Then you have chosen death, Stark." But before her gold cloaks could move, other steel rang in the hall. Men loyal to Ned, Northmen who had arrived in secret, stepped forward. Sir Barristan, shamed by the Queen's lies, unsheathed his blade at Ned's side. The court erupted into chaos. Sansa, standing in the shadows, felt her heart pounding. She had delivered her father to this moment. Every whisper, every stitch, every mask she wore, it had all led to this confrontation. And though blood threatened to spill, she did not regret it. For the first time, she felt not like a child dreaming of knights, but like a wolf baring her teeth. Yet she also knew the danger was greater than ever. For Cersei's eyes locked onto hers, blazing with fury. The Queen had realized at last the little bird was no bird at all. She was the spy who had undone her plans. And in that look, Sansa saw her own death promised. The court thought the game was over. That was their fifth mistake. Rage, but with the weight of northern iron. Men of the realm, you swore your oaths to Robert Baratheon. His heir is Stannis, his true brother. Do not stain your blades with falsehoods. The words hung heavy. The gold cloaks looked between Lannister gold and Stark steel. The court watched with bated breath, and then betrayal struck. Peter Baelish stepped forward, smiling his serpent smile. "Alas, Lord Stark, honor makes a poor shield. The city belongs to those who can pay for it." He gestured, and half the gold cloaks surged at once, not for Ned, but for the men beside him. Steel rang, blood spilled, and chaos erupted in the throne room. Sansa, hidden near the pillars, felt her heart claw at her ribs. This was no longer whispers and embroidery. This was war. She watched as one of her father's Northmen fell with a sword in his gut. She saw Ser Barristan carve through 2 cloaks before being surrounded. She saw Littlefingers smirk as if this was all a play, staged for his amusement. But most of all, she saw the Queen watching her. Cersei did not rush into the chaos. No. She stood still, eyes locked on Sansa, as though in that storm of blades. She had found her true enemy. The message in that stare was clear. "You destroyed my plan. You revealed my secret, and now I will destroy you." Ned fought fiercely, his blade shining in the torchlight. For all his honor, he was still a man of war, and more than one cloak fell before his steel. But even with Northmen at his side, they were outnumbered. Sansa knew then that if she stayed hidden, the Queen would find her later. And she knew her father could not fight both the cloaks and Cersei's wrath alone. Her training whispered in her mind, "Observe, adapt, survive." So she moved. Through the chaos, she slipped behind the court, her embroidery basket clutched like a weapon. She darted past wounded men, past frightened lords, until she reached the dais where the young king sat. Joffrey, pale and furious, was shouting orders no one obeyed. "Kill him! Kill the traitor! I am your king!" His voice cracked like a boy's. Sansa saw her chance. She fell to her knees before him, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "My king, mercy! Stop the fighting! Show them your strength by sparing their lives!" The hall froze for a heartbeat. Eyes turned from blood to the red-haired girl kneeling before the boy king. Joffrey blinked, startled. He had expected pleas, yes, but not from her. Not from the girl who had always played the sweet bird at his side. For a moment, pride swelled. In him, he liked the thought of mercy making him look strong. But Cersei's voice cut through. "Do not listen, Joffrey. The girl lies as her father lies." The boy's face twisted between mother and betrothed. His pride battled his cruelty, and in that hesitation, Ned's men rallied. The Northmen forced a path to the doors, dragging their wounded with them. Ned himself bled from a cut across his arm, but his eyes never left his daughter. "Now, Sansa," he bellowed. She sprang up and ran to him, her basket spilling threads across the floor like trails of blood. Together, they pushed through the melee, Ser Barristan covering their retreat with the fury of a man regaining his honor. By the time the cloaks reorganized, the Starks were gone. The throne room lay in ruin, blood on the marble, whispers on every tongue, and a boy king shaking on his seat. That night, King's Landing burned with rumor. Some said Ned Stark had fled to gather his banners. Others claimed Stannis already marched with fire and sword. The truth mattered less than the fear. And in the Queen's chamber, Cersei's rage boiled. "She made a fool of you, Joffrey," she hissed, "on your own throne, before your own men. That girl has poisoned her father's honor with her lies, and now the realm doubts you." Joffrey pouted, shame still fresh on his face. "She begged me. She begged me for mercy." "Perhaps I should have let her watch her father die." Cersei's lips curled. "We will find them both, and when we do, the wolf girl dies first." In the Stark camp, hidden in the shadows of the city, Ned sat with his daughter. His arm was bound, his face lined with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with pride. "You saved us today," he said. "Not with a sword, but with words. A true spy knows when to hide and when to strike. You struck at the boy's pride, and it gave us our chance." Sansa lowered her eyes, though her chest swelled. "I only did what you taught me." Ned gripped her hand. "And now you must be ready, For we are wolves surrounded by lions. And lions do not forgive. The throne had not been won. The war had not been decided, but something had changed forever. No longer was Sansa Stark the gentle bird dreaming of songs. She was the hidden claw, the whisper that could cut deeper than steel. And in the Queen's fury, in the boy king's shame, she saw her reflection, a girl marked for death, but also a girl who had turned the game itself. The court thought she could not survive outside the cage. That was their sixth mistake. The wolves were loose in the lion's den. Ned Stark and his daughter hid in the shadows of King's Landing, taking shelter in a loyal blacksmith's home near the Mudgate. The city above them hummed with tension. Whispers of rebellion, fear of Stannis, and rumors that the Starks plotted in secret. Sansa sat by a small window, listening to the footsteps outside. Every sound carried danger. The Queen's men scoured the streets, searching for them. Her training echoed. In her mind, see, listen, remember, it had saved her before. Now it would decide if she lived at all. Ned gathered his closest men, Sir Barristan, who had forsaken the Lannisters for honor, a handful of Northmen still loyal and alive, and Sansa, who sat quietly in their councils. The city cannot hold, Ned said, voice grim. Cersei's claws are deep, and Littlefinger owns the guards. We cannot take the throne by force. Our hope lies in Stannis. Stannis is slow, Barristan muttered. Every day we wait, the Queen's noose tightens. Sansa lifted her eyes. Then we must make her noose choke her first. The men stared at her. She was only a girl, her hands still soft, her voice still sweet. But Ned nodded. He had learned to trust those words. Go on, he urged. Sansa leaned forward. The court thinks Joffrey is strong, but I have seen his fear. If the realm sees it too, if the lords know their king is only a cruel boy who hides behind his mother, then they will turn to Stannis. We must show them his weakness. Her words hung in the smoky room. Slowly, Barristan's frown softened. A wolf's daughter, indeed. The plan was dangerous. That night, Sansa slipped through the streets, disguised as a serving girl. She carried a tray of wine, her hair hidden beneath a scarf, her embroidery basket slung at her side like any common woman. She had practiced the walk, the lowered eyes, the silence. To the guards she was invisible, but her destination was the Red Keep itself. Inside, she moved among the servants, quiet as a shadow, until she reached the hall where Joffrey dined. There, she poured his wine with trembling hands, bowing low, so he would not notice her face, and as she set the cup before him, she dropped a small piece of her embroidery onto the floor, a rose stitched with golden thread. One of the lords picked it up. Curious, he held it to the torchlight, where the threads spelled out a hidden code Sansa had devised. Bastard of Jaime. The hall erupted in whispers. The lords glanced at Joffrey, at his golden hair, at the Queen sitting stiff beside him. The word spread like wildfire. Bastard. Incest. False heir. Joffrey turned red with fury, slamming his goblet down. Silence! I am your king, he shrieked, his voice cracking like a child's. But the damage was done. His outburst, his fear, his childish rage, it was all laid bare before the court. The seed of doubt had been planted in every heart. Sansa slipped away before the Queen's eyes could find her. She returned to her father, her breath fast, her face pale. I did it, she whispered. They know now. Ned clasped her shoulders, pride and fear mingling in his eyes. You have struck a blow without drawing a blade. The realm itself will turn. The city trembled over the next days. Whispers spread faster than steel could cut. Merchants muttered about Joffrey's scream in the hall. Lords spoke of his weakness. Small folk laughed in the taverns, calling him the bastard king. Cersei raged like a storm. She ordered spies beaten, servants questioned, even children dragged before her for punishment. But the rumor would not die, and she knew where it had begun. Her vengeance turned to Sansa. One dawn, the Queen's men came crashing into the blacksmith's home. Swords clashed, steel rang, men screamed. Ned fought like a wolf cornered, Barristan at his side, but the numbers were too great. Sansa hid beneath the table, heart hammering. She saw boots crash past, blood dripping onto the floor, her father's roar filling the room. "Run, Sansa!" he shouted. "Run!" She did. Through alleys, through shadows, she fled as the city burned around her. Behind her, she heard her father's final cries, the clash of blades, the shouts of men. She did not look back. When she reached the river, loyal Northmen found her. They carried her aboard a small boat, pushing off before the Queen's men could catch them. As the city faded behind her, Sansa wept. Not the soft tears of a child, but the hard tears of a wolf. Her father was gone, but his lessons lived in her. Months later, the war for the throne erupted. Stannis marched, Renly claimed his crown, Robb was named king in the north. The realm tore itself apart, and in the shadows of it all, letters passed from camp to camp, each bearing the mark of a rose. Stitched in thread, they carried secrets, who was loyal, who was false, where armies would march. The lords never knew whose hand guided those whispers, but those who looked closely said the script was neat, the letters small, as if written by a careful young woman. In the camps of the north, men spoke of her with awe. Not Arya the sword, not Robb the commander, not Jon the brother beyond the wall, but Sansa, the silent wolf. Cersei still dreamed of her death. She cursed the name Stark, swore vengeance on the girl who had exposed her children. But she could never catch her. Sansa was no longer a bird in a cage. She had flown into the storm, her wings sharp as knives. She had begun as her father's spy. Now she was her family's whisperer, the unseen hand that twisted the game. The court thought she would never survive the lions. That was their final mistake.